Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Hi, everyone. How are you? I hope you're in good health. I hope you're secure. We've been talking a lot. I've been talking a lot. I just consider us in conversation. This opening of the eyes Gosho, this treatise of Nichiren's. It's lengthy, but it's a pretty deep dive into, as you've heard me say already, the nature of what is Gohonzon, what is that ultimate aim, that goal, that most important facet of our experiential mind as sentient beings, Honzon, what it's about, what its parameters are, where we can find it in our minds. How do we define what that is? And the very nature of locating it is defined within the Lotus Sutra, according to Nichiren doctrine, right? So his creation of this mandala, right? This is a scroll with characters on it. Mandala kind of indicates that there's a motive force, a desired, a reaching for a certain elucidation by understanding the totality of the concepts that are on this scroll. That's more to the point of the word mandala. The mandala isn't the scroll, it's what the scroll is leading you to perceive, right? And that leading to perception is the mandala function of the scroll. And because this series is labeled Nichiren on Mandala and Gohonzon, this is why I'm spending so much time trying to define these terms so that we understand what we're saying to one another when we speak about the mandala versus the Gohonzon, which is the discovered objective aim, accomplishment of our chanting using this mandala. We reach an insight, a point of a vantage point, what do you call it when you travel? You have these viewpoints along the road, right, where you can survey. And what do you survey when you reach that point of perception? Buddha-ness. Does that all? It all tracks, right? All right. In discussing this pattern of mind opening, perceptive experience of, what a lot of dialogue, and we see it in the opening of the eyes, tends to be about is the nature of the way our influences, our attitudes influence our perceptive mind. And I was just reading an interview actually with Jacqueline Stone by Frederick M. Ranayo Higgins from Tricycle magazine. Some of you may know Tricycle. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. Over the years, I've had kind of a love-hate relationship with Tricycle because it tries to be all things to all people, and unfortunately, that allows for a lot of really useless thinking. But it is at least a magazine in search of creating a dialogue and voice about Buddhism. Yeah, not all voices should receive the same attention as others, but this is the somewhat democratic ideal. Although I would say it's not so democratic if you're allowing everything to be on the same level. That's not truly democracy. Everything has a voice, but not all voices should achieve the same merit. There's a That's the rub of democracy, isn't it? So this article, which I'll there you go. I'll put up here for a moment so that if you're interested, you can find it online, or maybe you can pick up Tricycle Magazine, whatever. It's not a very long article, but Jacqueline talks a broad stroke of the history of Buddhism, and the interviewer does ask interesting questions, and it has some value. But it brought to the fore, in my mind, there's a bit of a drop-off between the academic discussion on Buddhism and the secular discussion on Buddhism. And in fact, she touches very well on this problematic, if you will, or this development over centuries, yeah? And I just wanted to offer up, it made me think of a very simple idea, and I thought it might be useful to share with you. So here goes. I don't know if I'm going to make a separate the this and that analogy as I've done in the past. I'm trying to think of a little character like Tutor Turtle or something. I don't want to use somebody else's, but come up with my own character. Suffice it to say simply this: attitude and intent. You hear me talking about this all the time. There's a discussion in Nichirenism in Japan, and you have to take all of that discussion with the knowledge that we're talking about a nation of Japan, a culture, a particular culture, right? World wars, all of that kind of thing into account in the nation building, the unity, the political aspects that invariably, and we read this all the time in Buddhism, influence, right, the practice, the propagation of Buddhism. People are people. Once we find something engaging that is useful to us, we start to heap on every other aspect of our lives onto whatever it is that we're practicing. And nothing is better suited or more easily suited to that purpose than something as core as Buddhism, yeah? But this idea of internal development versus external development, where's the border? How does this work, right? And we discuss it all the time about, I certainly do, about the influence of our environment. Well, Buddhism is built on the idea that there's no separation between self, quote unquote, and environment, that they're really two expressions of the same thing. Remember again, I will point out that discussion belongs to the mind. How we perceive self and environment is really the same. We samsarically separate ourselves from self and environment, but there can be no perception of self without considering what the self is within, and what the self is within is a reflection of the idea of ourselves. So it's a trick of the mind to think that our environment is something separate or other from us, mind. It's separate from this body, but would this body have the shape and form that it has without the environment? All right, so those words, they ring. So my thought was, here's a simple thought experiment for you. Picture an entity. I don't know, call it Pradeep. Maybe it's a human, maybe it isn't. Whatever, not important. It's a consciousness. It's a sentient mind. Let's get specific. If it is suggested to that sentient mind that we have satellites, we have all kinds of space junk flying around this Earth, right? Satellites of communication, of surveillance, of weather, of on and on and on and on. Plus there's stuff flying around this planet that's not even used anymore. It's just detritus. It's just garbage, right? And somebody puts into your mind, that sentient mind, that Pradeep, at any moment, some big old chunk of space garbage could just fly down and squish you on the ground and kill you. And you wouldn't even see it coming. That danger exists. So here's my simple mental experiment. If Pradeep, I've chosen that word now, this entity, wakes up every morning, lives its entire day till it goes to sleep at night, and I would argue would have a hard time going to sleep, with the constant idea that at any moment, squish. How do you suppose Pradeep would experience her day? I know Pradeep sounds male, but I'm messing with it because I don't want you to get stuck there. How do you think she would see the day? Do you think she would see the pretty flowers and hear the bees and birds and offer a good morning to anyone she would encounter? Do you think that when lunch came around, she would be excited about what she might eat that day? Or is everything a drudgery? Is everything she does constantly impinged with the idea of squish any moment? Wouldn't her environment, her experience of life, her life environment, her mirror of existence, no matter what the day looked like or sounded like or smelled like, it would be pretty dire. She might even be so stressed about it that her own body would start to develop unhealthy processes, leading to maybe an ulcer, a hole in her stomach, pain, right? Maybe her posture would be terrible. Maybe that would promote arthritis. All right, I can go on and on and on. But you do get my point, right? Because alternatively, if even with this knowledge that that could happen, squish, any moment, she instead invokes every morning an attitude that says that every moment that she has is absolutely brilliant. That within every single moment that she experiences the totality of the universe is so incredibly precious and wonderful and nurturing. And she leaves the house to go to work or do whatever she does, seeing the blue sky or the rain, I don't care. Smelling the rain, hearing the rain, feeling the warmth on a sunny day of the sun warming the back of her neck, smelling the air, the different smells in the air, seeing every color of flower and whatever, concrete, the noise, the sound of the air, the sound of every molecule entering her nose and mouth as she breathes it, and it feeds into her lungs and breathes life into her bloodstream and nurturing her organs. And oh, there's another entity. Hi, isn't this wonderful? Attitude, intent. With that attitude, her sentience doesn't even pay attention to the idea that at any given moment, squish. I simply don't need to think about that. If it happens, it happens. If I have no control over it, why am I worried about it? Let me just see the wonderful and maybe squish happens. Maybe it never happens. But the point is, every moment that sentient mind, Pradeep, lives its life is amazing, stress-free, anxiety-free. Isn't it obvious that Pradeep's inner and outer life are exactly the same? That there is no separation? Because what goes on as a perceptive reality in our mind is the reality we inhabit, we experience. I mean, this is a deep simplification, grant you. But this is the very thing that we're working toward in Buddhism. We call that wonderful lightness of being in the moment into the next, perceiving our experience of life as always a wondrous thing, Buddha-ness. But we also have in samsara this craving attachment to boxing everything up, don't we? So how can we take that natural built-in tendency to identify and box everything up and liberate ourselves from our attachment to that process and use that very process to perceive this much grander experience of life? We can throw terms at it, we can train ourselves to do it, but without a strong idea, a visualization, if you will, a commitment to that very mind that is constantly going, instantiating, moment to moment to moment to moment. We need to train it away from collecting and craving to, oh, here's life. Yeah, there's all that craving and collecting, that's samsara. But I don't have to live in that. I can live with it. But that's not what's important here. What's important is living. Moment to moment to moment to moment. And then all that other stuff is kind of, it's like the bubbles in a bubble bath. The bubbles are fun, entertaining, right? But that's not all that's going on in a bubble bath. Do you see where I'm so when you read in this article or when we discuss these ideas of mixed up thinking about nationalism, which was a big aspect of some branches of Nichirenism in Japan. Well, that's a cultural reality. They were searching for a cultural identity. That they used Nichirenism as a tool to get there doesn't mean that's what Nichiren taught. Now do you see my point? So as we study all of these informations, it's important always to come back to Pradeep. Keep it simple. Don't look or be wary of attaching all sorts of other narratives into it. Because all those other narratives, that's not Buddhism. Those are things being affected by your Gohonzon mind, your search for being alive fully in every moment of your life. Of course it will affect everything, right? And this is why when we practice to enlighten ourselves, of course we're not separate from our environment. Oops, power just went out. Well, that was interesting. Did we keep... Okay, I think we recorded through that. I'll have to check that. It's still working. Wow, lost monitor and stuff. All right, let's read a little bit more of this. But do you understand what I'm talking about? Nichiren is in the midst of dissecting this in terms of, first of all, Japan, secondly, medieval Japan, shogunate Japan, and in the midst of a lot of rhetorical devices around Shakyamuni's teaching of the Lotus Sutra that are interpreting, doing the very thing I was just cautioning us about, taking these amazing teachings of Buddhism and trying to shoehorn them into other agendas. Agendas of politics, of power, of, right? And all of Buddhism is about your mind and how you perceive life. Your life, all life, same thing. All of the other agendas, those are politic. Make sure that you understand that the politic isn't the Buddhism. That the politic is something other. Follow the law, not the persons. The politics is about the persons, or organizations, or sects. All of that is ego, it's person. Follow the law, not the person. It's a really, really important litmus test as you proceed in your practice, yeah? Nichiren continues, again, the eminent monks of the Tendai and True Word schools, though nominally representatives of their respective schools, are in fact quite ignorant of their teachings. You see, that he's nailing exactly what I was just saying. These teachers are such political animals that what they propagate really has little to do with what they say they're propagating, Buddhism. That's dangerous, right? It's very easy to get confused when that happens. So keep clear. In the depths of their greed and out of fear of the courtiers and warriors, shogunate, they compromise with the assertions of the Nembutsu and Zen followers and sing their praises. Long ago, many treasures Buddha and the various Buddhas who were emanations of Shakyamuni Buddha acknowledged their allegiance to the Lotus Sutra, the Myoho Renge-kyo, saying that they would, quote, make certain that the law long endured. The law, the obvious nature of the process of life, the engine of life, yeah? But now the eminent leaders of the Tendai school, once great, acknowledged the assertion that the doctrines of the Lotus Sutra were very profound, but that human understanding is slight. So what? Does that diminish the teaching? But that's how they interpret it. Oh, the Lotus Sutra is too profound. It's, us ordinary folk, we can't, what? Feigning stupidity. Feigning, hey, I'm part of you, I'm not special. But, in fact, using that as a manipulation to take people away from the core teaching of Shakyamuni. It's just, we see this all the time today, right? Politicians dumbing themselves down so that they get more ignorant people pledging allegiance to them without even knowing that they're working against their own best interest. It's a ploy as old as time, yeah. As a result, the Lotus Sutra exists in Japan today in name only. There is not a single person who actually practices it and attains enlightenment. They just pay lip service to it. Oh, yeah, that thing over there, that chanting thing, yeah. Who can be called a votary of the Lotus Sutra in this situation? We see monks who burn down temples and pagodas and are exiled in numbers too great to count. Wow, what's going on there? And we see numerous eminent monks who fawn on the courtiers and warriors and are hated for it by the page-turning karma, by the people. Can men such as these be called the votaries of the Lotus Sutra? Because the predictions of the Buddha are not false, the three types of enemies of the Lotus Sutra already fill this country. You can see examples of them everywhere, is what Nichiren is saying, long story short. And yet, as though to belie the golden words of Shakyamuni Buddha, there seems to be no votary of the Lotus Sutra. How can this be? How can this be? Right? If we're to see the truth in all of these records of Shakyamuni's teachings and see them borne out over the centuries, how is it that his explanation of this era that we now live in would spawn a votary of the Lotus Sutra to rescue, to propagate the teachings before they disappear? How is it that it hasn't happened? How could that be? It must be somewhere. There must be a person somewhere. Otherwise, then we'd have fodder to believe that, well, this was just fanciful thinking, this Buddhism thing. You know, even though all of this was validated for thousands of years, now it's not really happening. So, oh well, it worked for a while, right? But let us consider, he says, who is it who is cursed and spoken ill of by the populace, right? That's part of the story. Shakyamuni said, this individual, he'll be reviled. I mean, look at how I'm being, people are trying to kill me. And during Shakyamuni's time, that certainly happened, right? Devadatta included. So, in this lesser age, later on, 2,500 years after I'm gone, even though people's capacity will be to more easily attain enlightenment, will be so overwhelmed with distraction that somebody will need to hold this teaching up. It won't survive on its own. It will have to be mentored. There will have to be a champion to raise other champions, you and I. Who is the monk who is attacked with swords and staves? Who's Nichiren talking about here, right? But his point is well taken. Who is the monk who, because of the Myoho Renge-kyo, is accused in petitions submitted to the courtiers and warriors, those very political people, politicians, supposed leaders of other schools of Buddhism, as well as lay people, right? Who is the monk who is again and again banished, and he quotes that, lifted straight from the Lotus Sutra, as the Lotus Sutra predicted, he says, who else in Japan besides Nichiren has fulfilled these predictions? Now, he's saying this to his audience in this treatise as much as he's saying it to himself, right? We've seen that throughout several Gosho, where he explains his own concerns, his own doubts. And how has he resolved his doubts? Through the very words of Shakyamuni. And here he's doing it again. Mouth isn't working well today. Well, I don't know that it ever works that well. Anyway. But I, Nichiren, he says, am not a votary of the Lotus Sutra because contrary to the prediction, the gods have cast me aside. There's that doubt again. But he's exploring that doubt because he knows some of his own followers are going... Nichiren says he's speaking the truth, but look at all the crap that's being heaped on him. maybe he is just a loudmouth, like they say, right? Doubt, doubt, doubt. Who then, in this present age, will be the votary of the Lotus Sutra and fulfill the prophecy of the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, or Buddha-ness? Who is it? Who will step up? If not me, then who? Interesting challenge, yeah? The Buddha and Devadatta are like a form and its shadow. In lifetime after lifetime, they are never separated. The personages of Buddha and Devadatta, the positive and negative, the yin, the yang, the full experience of life, living, versus the negative side of it, the attached, right, dragging the past along, the Devadatta, competing, the distraction competing with the attention, Buddha Devadatta. Prince Shotoku and his archenemy Moriya appeared at the same time, like the blossom and the calyx of the lotus, right? There's that Renge example again. There's a physicality to the lotus flower, but there's also cause-effect happening. The physicality of the lotus produces itself simultaneous with its blossoming. Here I am, here's my future. Moment to moment to moment to moment. 3,000 realms in a single thought. This idea is repeated so often, and yet we don't discuss it enough. We miss it. We get hung up in the words or in the metaphor. How am I like a lotus flower? How is the brain like a... We go all over the place, but we miss that simple point that's being made. This moment-to-moment instantiation of potential. It's happening whether you know it or not. But we have the unique opportunity with a sentient mind to go, oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. We witness it. We experience it with our minds, not just our bodies, right? If there exists a votary of the Lotus Sutra, then the three types of enemies are bound to exist as well. How could you see the work of Nichiren, as profound as it is, without the backdrop of all those who want to silence him? Doesn't that you shouldn't doubt Nichiren's work because of it. It reinforces the importance, the truth of Nichiren's work, that he has so many enemies, because he's perturbing their comfortable politic. But that's not Nichiren the man. That's Nichiren the work. And to relate it to you and I, when we're practicing well, things are going glowingly and everything's beatific. When something suddenly appears that's really ugly or scary, what we like to call obstacles, that's the time to double down. This is the other lesson that's always in here. That's why resolve, confidence, attitude, intent, so important, because that's what carries you through those moments when the you-know-what hits the fan, right? You need to be able to stand strong while the fan is throwing that around, knowing, confident, resolved, that the very fact that that fan is working and throwing all that stuff everywhere is because... You ever look at the front of a great ship going through the ocean? Right? The ship looks steady and it's flying along on the water, but you look down at the front of that ship and there's turmoil and froth and, yeah? But you don't look at that turmoil and froth and say, oh gosh, stop the boat, stop the boat. No, it's evidence of the forward progress of the boat. Yeah. So instead of seeing it, experiencing it as, oh, I gotta stop, everything's horrible, seeing it as, ha ha ha, yeah, I'm going right through you. Come along. Thank you for the validation. What an interesting way to look at life, right? What an interesting way for Pradeep to hear a whistle or something flying through the air and not cower to the ground and wait for squish, but instead to, yeah, here is life. Who then is the votary of the Lotus Sutra? Let us seek him out and make him our teacher. As the Lotus Sutra says, to find such a person is as rare as for a one-eyed turtle to chance upon a piece of driftwood with a hole just the right size to hold him. Find that story. It's an interesting fable. And I'm going to mark this now. Yeah. We will continue in the next video. Someone may praise or raise this question. It would surely appear that the three types of enemies are present today, but there is no votary of the Lotus Sutra. If one were to say that you, Nichiren, are the votary of the Lotus Sutra, then the following serious discrepancies would become apparent. So now Nichiren, you see him shifting through this discussion of Gohonzon from what is it? What's the history of it? And now that we're here and I'm proposing this is the true teaching of Shakyamuni for self-realization, now he's going to challenge all of his contemporary critics. And he's going to give you very sound reasoning why you need to stop being distracted by those politics. Well, that's a useful lesson for all of us in our daily lives, right? So that's what we'll get into in the next video. For this video, I'm so super thankful that you are part of this Sangha. Please like and subscribe to manipulate use the algorithms of YouTube to grow this Sangha so that more people can easily find, have access to these discussions. I truly appreciate that. It's Bodhisattva work. And those of you who are making use of the threefoldlotus.com website and downloading stuff, you guys, awesome. Thank you so much for doing that. Those of you who can purchase the ebooks off that same site, I haven't heard from anyone yet who suggested rolling those ebooks availability through the lulu.com website, so I try to keep as a print resource. You can get the books either way. I don't have all the books on the ebooks page on threefoldlotus.com. You'll process your purchase through lulu.com. So, but you may not, if you go to lulu.com looking for the e-book version of a print book, you may not find it, just because I haven't listed it on the website proper. It's on threefoldlotus.com, so that's where you would get the ebooks. Anyway, long story short, patrons, those of you who are contributing to keep this channel alive, I just purchased some equipment based on your contributions. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. You don't need to know all of that. That's not what this channel is about. But rest assured, your donations, your support through Patreon or through PayPal, super valuable and greatly appreciated by all of us, actually, to keep growing this resource. So thank you all, mostly for your practice of Myoho Renge-kyo. Yeah. So keep practicing, keep it strong. Take care of your health and those around you. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one, okay? Bye for now.